Now, though he had been working at the site for a month, though he'd walked the same path to it every day, it still took him by surprise, the tremor of emotion as he rounded the quay and saw the sails arcing out of chaos, as if he'd come upon a rare and beautiful animal in a stark landscape. There was no Swedish word to describe this, no English word that he knew. It wasn't as simple as awe or even love. It was the clutch at his heart as he lifted his eyes to its curves and lines, its reach for beauty, a connection between the human and the sublime. Hello, I'm Kristina Olsson, and I'm here to talk to you about my new novel, Shell. I'm delighted to be doing it in Sydney, with this extraordinary building behind me, because it plays a leading role in the book, along with the deadly lottery that saw young men sent off to a war in a place very few of them had heard of, Vietnam. 1965 was the year Australia joined the Vietnam War. It was also the year the Conservative government introduced conscription for 20-year-old men. It was done in a kind of lottery. Numbered wooden balls were spun in a barrel and chosen blindly. If your birth date came up, your number came up, literally. At the same time, though, one of the world's most daring and controversial buildings was taking shape on Sydney Harbour. Within 12 months, the first conscripts were in Vietnam fighting someone else's war, and Jon Utzon, the brilliant Danish architect of the Opera House, was gone too. After years of conflict and controversy, he'd lost his war with the old as well. The two main characters in Shell, Pearl and Axel, are at the centre of these two seemingly disparate events. Axel Lindqvist is a gifted Swedish glassmaker, commissioned by Utzon to make a landmark piece of glass for the foyer of the Opera House. Pearl Keogh is a journalist who has been banished to the women's pages as punishment after being photographed at an anti-war demonstration. Pearl has a very personal reason for opposing the war. This book had its genesis in the cultural legacies of my Swedish father and my Australian mother. But one of the aha moments for me, if you like, was at the Opera House. My Norwegian niece had come to visit and couldn't leave until she'd seen it. As we crawled all over the building, I realised that for the first time, I was seeing it through Scandinavian eyes. Through the controversy over its design, it had been called many things: a collapsed circus tent, nuns in a scrum. But that day, I could see that the shapes were not strange to my niece. She understood them at once. The other moment was years before. I remember my mother talking about Vietnam to my 8-year-old son. I remember the look in my son's eyes when his grandmother said to him, "If there's ever a war like that again, you won't be going. I'll hide you in an attic somewhere. I'll shoot off one of your toes." She smiled at him then, and he smiled back, understanding it for what it was, an expression of love. He would not be lost under any circumstances. This fierce, protective love was something I wanted to explore in Pearl. This story grew for nearly 5 years without a name. One day, on a riding retreat with friends, I walked along a beach in the early morning, plucking pippies, which are like small clams, from the sand. I got back to the house and plonked them on a table, and looking down at them, this is what I saw. I called out to my friends, "What's this look like?" They gathered around and looked. "The bloody Opera House," they cried. I knew then that I had the name of the book, Shell. The word encapsulated for me not just the shapes that define the Opera House, but the shells we create to hide under, the carapaces we build to protect our fragility and our griefs and our fears, the veneers we live beneath. More than that, though, Shell reminds me that there are times when we do have to stand up, when we have to speak up, when we do need to take a side.